This show has never been solely about investments. We've talked about anything that affected people and their money.
From Times Square in New York City, the new Wall Street Week.
What do you say to a young person who thinks they're going to live forever and they don't feel that they need life insurance?
Well, first of all, life insurance isn't just for death protection. I'd start with that. It has, as I said, so many uses across your life expectancy, but also I think that's sort of a myopic view. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen to people that aren't good, and you don't control many of them. And to assume that you're invincible, which a lot of young people do, is a negative. You know, the opposite side of that, insurance is cheapest when you're young.
Yeah, and I asked that question for a reason. I really want to encourage younger people to think about life insurance as part of their overall portfolio, particularly if they have young children.
Right. I've never met anyone who says I have too much life insurance.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So many individuals are still under the impression that I could just take my life insurance, take it, put it in the bottom left-hand drawer, and forget about it.
We're back with John Schlifsky, and also joining us, Henry Montag, principal of the Tolley Center East.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit, Henry. For a little context, could you tell us a little bit about your business?
Well, let me first explain what the Tolley Center stands for. It's Trust-Owned Life Insurance, and what we do is several things. One, we provide continuing education credits for accountants and for attorneys. We also do a good deal of writing, both professional as well as consumer. We also wind up spending a good deal of time, or at least for the last 22 years, providing the institutional trustee with information regarding the life insurance that they are responsible for managing. And lastly, we take the amateur trustee, usually the son or the daughter of any person's client, and we provide some guidance, and we try to give that individual some best practices and some data and some good information to try to prevent that individual from abdicating his responsibilities.
You've been talking about an impending life insurance crisis. Okay, so share that with our viewers. Tell us what you're worried about.
Okay. Unlike the world of whole life, I'm going to take you back to 1982, 1983. Life was very, very simple. There were two types of insurances. There was term insurance and there was whole life insurance. And both of those were guaranteed, as you know. Made life very, very simple. At that point, life insurance was simply a buy and hold asset. Things changed after 1983 when E.F. Hutton decided that they were going to bundle this insurance, and what happened back then is when interest rates were upwards of 14%, people set their trigger at that 14%. Well, over the years, as interest rates, of course, came down, nobody ever bothered telling the trustee, usually, as I say, the eldest son or the daughter, that insurance was not guaranteed, and that 14% rate that might have been initially pegged was starting to come down.
So, Henry, these policies that were sold in the 80s, you think a lot of people own these policies today and that they don't know what they own? Explain it in more general terms.
It's not that they don't know what they own. So many individuals are still under the impression that I could just take my life insurance, take it, put it in the bottom left-hand drawer, and forget about it. Nothing to be further from the truth.
Who are the people that get impacted?
Well, back then, you had individuals that were purchasing life insurance when estate taxes were significantly lower. So if you had an estate of $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, you were, of course, buying life insurance and putting it in a trust. But the majority of the trustees, other than the institutional trustees, they had no clue. And by the way, the institutional trustees make up approximately 10% of the trust-owned life insurance.
John, do you see this as a potential crisis, and what are you guys doing about this issue?
Well, we don't really sell much universal life, so it's not, for us, it's not a big issue.
You think it's an industry issue?
So for our clients, you know, there probably are people that have to deal with it, and ultimately what it's going to require is to pay premiums to keep those policies from lapsing. But I don't know if it's, certainly wouldn't call it a crisis with all due respect. I think there's probably pockets, insurance trusts, where they need to put some more money in to keep those policies above water. But, you know, in many cases, insurance companies have done a lot to keep those policies from lapsing.
Well, with all due respect, I find that many of the sons and daughters haven't a clue.
Right.
And again, keep in mind that back then, when when universal life insurance became the darling of the insurance industry, it became that because it was significantly less expensive.
Right.
Now, LIMRA tells us that 86% of the population doesn't buy life insurance simply because it's too expensive.
Right.
So you have an awful lot of people that just simply aren't aware. And over a 20, 30-year period, all of a sudden when you try to make up the fact that you haven't paid the proper premium and the trustees didn't know that they should have been increasing the premium, I believe you do have a problem.
It sure goes to, though, the importance of having a trustee that knows what they're doing, managing it. And oftentimes when you pick Uncle Joe or Aunt Jane, you are potentially setting yourselves up for a situation like that. That's why we encourage all of our clients, if you want to name a relative as a trustee, make sure that you have a successor trustee that's a corporate trustee that can really step in and take care of things.
Henry, how do you tell people to think about insurance when they think about their overall ability to save money and allocate some money out?
Well, again, I have a little bit of a different philosophy than you do, John. My feeling is depending on the audience, if I'm dealing with a younger individual, I'm looking at protection. I look at insurance as a wonderful means to save, but sometimes that whole life contract can be significantly more expensive, and I find that many individuals with younger kids would rather take that money, or should perhaps take that money, and place it into a lesser expensive form of insurance, be it term for a short period of time, or a universal, where, of course, as you know, there is no cash value, and it becomes significantly less expensive, allowing individuals to purchase more coverage. So it depends on the individual.
So universal life, just so we explain to the viewers, there's fixed coupon, fixed premium. When the coupon started going down, it means arguably the premium has to go up to sustain the coverage.
And therein lies the problem.
So where are we 10 years from now? I'd like to ask both of you that. Start with you, John. Where are we 10 years from now? Are we going to be in a crisis?
Well, I do think there are a number of carriers out there that are making unrealistic assumptions around investment returns in their universal life products. And unfortunately, the way the product works, somebody's going to be on the hook to make that up. You know, they're assuming 7-8% rates of return when 10-year Treasury's at 207 or whatever it was. That's just not feasible. And if we do stay low for long, those policies are going to be underwater. We just are much more conservative than that. We do sell those products. We don't make those kind of return assumptions. We have much lower investment return assumptions, just because we don't want to put our clients in a bad position.
And so, Henry, what do you
think? Well, again, many individuals are not in touch with their advisors as much as they should be. Right. And while the advisor and the company might have the right information, unfortunately, the client, who either is relying on himself or on that aunt or uncle or son or daughter, doesn't have the right information.
So let's say I'm somebody that's uninformed. I bought one of these policies. What's my next call?
I think it's important, part of the problem with some of what Henry's describing is that many of these products were sold through brokerage channels where the client has no relationship with the person that sold it to us. Northwestern Mutual, we only sell through our financial advisors. As I was saying earlier, we expect a lifetime relationship, so our people have a responsibility to their clients.
We are back with John Schlifsky and Henry Montag. John, how does the industry look 10 years from now differently, if it does at all?
Well, from our perspective, what we really think our future is developing this customer experience that's second to none. So, as you know, we bought LearnVest about 5-6 months ago, and this is all around our ability to create an experience for our clients that is something that they actually look forward to. And so rather than having to feel like insurance is an expense, which you said earlier, really look at insurance as something that you want to do and as part. Now that sounds sort of highfalutin, but I think we can create an experience where people's financial security is something that they want to consume and view it on a regular basis in a positive way, and that's what we're building.
And Henry, how do you see the industry?
I see that there will be a preponderance of more bundled products, meaning the combination of the insurance along with the investment, along with the long-term care insurance. And I also think that there's going to be some additional compliance.
Well, I appreciate you guys being here. We want to thank John Schlifsky and Henry Montag for spending time today with Wall Street Week. That's it for today. You can check in with us all week at wallstreetweek.com. Until next Sunday, have a prosperous week.
The preceding program was paid for and presented by Skybridge Media, LLC.